Wonderful morning, dear friends. I hope you're well. We've had a very, very busy week here in my household this week. I don't know why, it just seems that the rush is on, and there's just been so much activity. Anyway, it's just one of those things, and I'm finally getting down now to be able to start a field journal. I know traditionally field journals are slightly smaller size pocketbooks, but because I have some ideas for ephemera and stuff to go in that won't fit into a small book, I'm going to make a slightly bigger one. So what I have here to start with is just two of these Amazon envelopes, like so. I've opened this one out and I've stripped off the sides this little tab. My thought is that this would be rather nice to keep the flap, because if I made a slit in the journal, I could use that as a closure. So that's the first thing that I've gathered. I've got my Amazon envelopes. If you don't have an Amazon envelope, you could quite easily just cut a piece of card, something like the back of a cereal box, something similar. It's about that kind of a weight, and then just cut even just a slightly triangular shape to make a tab. Then I have some different kinds of papers, and I'll probably throw in some more. I've got some graph paper for being able to do things to scale. I've got some paper which has printed tables on, but I think this one's upside down, so I've got some of that. Yeah, I've got everything upside down here. I've got some papers I've just messed around on. We have done some stamping, which is quite nice, little bits and pieces there. I've got some coffee dyed paper. This was just the back of a diary that I had. Just, yeah, things with interesting markings. Here's something that's got different tables, currencies, different numbers. Have some numbers here. Got loads of stamps that I'm going to include, some images that I've stamped. So, you know, when you're starting out on something, you just pull out what you've got, and then as the mind starts to work, you can progress. So these are book pages that I've stamped with various things. Sometimes I just have an afternoon of just stamping. So there's some birds and bugs and stuff. I also have some covers of some soft exercise books. These would be quite useful if I'm making tabs, things like specimen slides, because they're slightly heavier weight card. And then for my cover, I'd like to make a faux leather cover. And I got in an Amazon box the other day this lovely brown paper, but it had perforations. So it's the kind of paper that they just twist up to fill inside the box. And I was able to tear that along those perforations. And guess what? Let me just find the right box. Look how wonderful that is to fit that size cover. So I'm wanting to be able to make all of this brown paper into faux leather paper. And that's what I'm going to head off to start doing now. And I'll join you join back with you in a minute when I've got all my supplies together. So the materials I'm going to be using for my faux leather cover are largely stamps, and I have done some work just using hair conditioner, not the combination one, but just, well, when I say combination, not the hair shampoo with the conditioner, just the conditioner on its own, or you could use hand cream. And I have worked with a little bit of water. So I've got some distress inks here. I've got vintage photo, black soot, and walnut stain. These are just the mini pads, and I don't mind if they get messed up, so that's all right. And then these are just really inexpensive pigment pads that I got off Temu. I think they were only £1 or £2. So this one is sort of like a bronzy color. This one is red. And this one is a green, and again, because they were cheapies, I don't mind them going. The reason why I like pigment is because when I put it on here, it's going to actually settle nicely and it won't smudge as much as a dye ink does. So I talked about my Amazon packaging, which I have here, and this is the color of it, this sort of like light grey brown kind of color. The next thing that I did was to take my Amazon packaging and really scrunch it up in a ball. Excuse the noise. And then you want to open it out, and you want to try and get your sort of lines in different angles. So I scrunched it up in one way, and then I scrunched it lengthwise like this, remembering that this is quite sort of soft recycled paper, so you've got to be a little bit gentle. It is going to maybe split a little bit, and then you will see that you start to pick up nice interesting ridges. I did move on at that stage to try and ink some up, but I wasn't happy with the color, so let me just show you what I did next. I've got my paper all crumpled up, and I'm doing this sort of in step by step because I've got such small space here. I haven't really got time to show you everything laid out, or haven't got space, should I say. I didn't like that natural color on its own. I just felt it was too light and it was too clean, and maybe a little bit just too beigey. So I've got some just coffee, just regular instant coffee, and I simply brushed that on to the one side. You can see the contrast and color there, and I let that dry. And what I quite like about the coffee is that it's not an overall color, so it is slightly mottled. And if I hold this up a little bit to the camera, you'll see a little bit on the right hand side how it's mottled, and a little bit on the left in this kind of area here. And to me, that is the kind of marks that you would get if you had a leather journal of some sort where your hands have perhaps had a little bit of oil on and it's been picked up. So I like that very much indeed, and I like the fact that it's just changed the base color of the card. So what I did after that was I scrumpled this up again. Let me just move these for now. I'm going to show you those in any case, but they might be a bit distracting. So I scrumpled it up again so that I had some raised areas of my card, and then I had some flat areas. And you'll see I've got lovely marks. And I have worked with a green ink pad, but I'm going to work now just purely with this red one, because I want a sort of browny color, and I don't mind the red. It'll be kind of oxblood. And if you swipe your ink pad over the actual paper that you've crumpled, you'll see that wherever you have got these crunchy marks, all the scrunched up papers, it's picking up the raised edges. And that's rather nice, because you are not getting a solid color as you would do if you were painting or even spritzing. You know, I did consider using my distressed ink sprays, but I just thought, no, they're going to spread everywhere and I'm going to get blotches of solid color. So I carried on doing this all over. If you want to accentuate a little bit more, you can quite easily just move your papers round and round, and as you've got flatter pieces you will pick up larger marks like that. So if you're wanting to have very, very delicate marks, scrunch your paper up a lot more than I've done now. Okay, all the way over that. Now, one of the things that you may or may not know about color is that whatever color you put on last will be the color that stands out the most. And if any of you ever did any of those paint technique classes where you were sponging on the wall and thing, if you put a blue on and you didn't like it and you put a yellow on top, the yellow would be dominant, although you'd see the other color behind it. So I've got my red color on here, and I've got this sort of bronzy gold color, and I'm going to swipe over using that. So this isn't a particularly strong color because it is lighter in shade compared to the red one, but it will subdue the red here. Okay, all the way along. And I must say, in my experimentation of trying to get the look that I want, I tried all sorts of things here. So I've subdued that, and you can quite easily take your ink pads and just really push them flat against your papers to get more color. I do want to have a bit more color on mine, so I am pressing down a little bit, which is flattening out the creases. And I'm trying to work to the edges because some of these edges will be on the inside of my cover, and I do want to have a little bit of a consistent look. So all the way through to the edge. And I'm just going to turn this around simply because it's easier to work with. Just swiping this through. And you'll see the difference between the right hand side where there's a lot more color and the left hand side here where I haven't done as much inking. So let me just work over here quickly. And this lovely soft color does mean that I'm getting color, but it's not really in your face. And I'm actually really liking that because it is filling in the background a bit. Very pleased I did the coffee dyeing. And when I do my coffee dyeing, I just open up a garbage bag and layer one piece of paper down, paint it, then put the next one on top. Right, so let me put that aside. Now, at this particular point, if you feel that you would like more ink, you could either go back in with a little bit more of your red color, if you're wanting just to stick to that same sort of tone, or you could go in with something different. So for here, I'm just going to use this little walnut stain. But because I don't want a huge amount of that, not as much as I did with that bronzy color, I'm going to take my paper again and just scrunch it up. Okay, and then I'm going to open it out and just scrunch it lengthways, just so that I don't have my lines all in one place. And don't worry if it does tear like that. It is, as I said earlier, very, very soft paper, and you can just glue that down. So I'm now going to take my walnut stain, which is quite a dark brown, and just lightly pick up some of those raised areas. If you're watching what I'm doing in the center here, you'll see that it's actually giving it really nice marks. So let me talk about the conditioner while I'm working. On some of the papers that I'm going to show you in a minute, I have rubbed conditioner in once I had finished doing my inking. It does make the paper slightly softer, but I must be honest that for my purposes, because I'm going to be gluing this down onto a hard piece of cardboard, which will be a cover of my book, I don't actually really feel it's necessary. It doesn't add that much to it. I've tried it with hand cream and it's pretty similar. The only thing I will say, that if I were to use it as a page in a book that was look like a leather look page, I might say that it would be really nice just to have that soft feel to it, because I'd be turning the page. But because I'm actually just gluing it down, I think I'm rather just going to use matte medium and glue my cover, the faux leather onto the cover with that. Right, so I'm now picking up all these little raised edges, and the more you've crinkled it, the more definition you will get. The more you go over with your color, the more interesting it's going to look. And if you get to this stage and you think, oh my goodness, I think I've made a mistake putting the brown on, which is this walnut stain, then remember what I told you about color. If you don't like it, you can go over with your reddish color and just make that the highlight color, more of sort of an oxblood. So you can see here it's picking up a lot more of that color already. So again, just subduing a little bit of the brown. And if we compare the two sides here, oopsie, let me see if I can fold it. You can see that that's definitely got more of a reddish tinge. So I'm going to show you the other ones that I've done. Actually, let me leave this out here so you can see. So that's got more of the red ink. I tried it with some of the green ink with the coffee. This one does have the hand cream in, so that's why it looks a little bit flatter. Yeah, I could work on this a little bit more, but I don't think that I would use this as a faux leather, but as an interesting sort of almost a batik kind of background for a nice piece of work. I think that'll be good. So this one's going to be a no for my field journal cover. And then I have got this piece where I've just worked with the red and that bronzy gold color. I love all these little fine marks that I've got here, and I love the contrast in colors. So I think that this is going to be the one that I'll probably work with, or the one that I've just done now, which is that one. We'll just have to wait and see. And then these were some of the tests that I did. So this was just the coffee dyed card where I had the red on, and then I started to add a bit of brown and a little bit more brown, and you could see that it gets really interesting the more you build up your colors. So that's the same as everything that we do with junk journals, isn't it? The more you build up your color, the more interesting it gets. So that started off like that. And then this was that green sheet where I started off with a plain green, and then I added the coffee, which I do feel greatly improved that, and then I put some walnut stain over that. But as I said, I think I'm going to go with the more earthy colors for that. So let me go and pack these things away and get up my journal cover, and I'll show you the next step. Right, so I'm ready to start sticking my faux leather paper onto the cardboard, and I have had a look at the paper on the other side. I know it's a bit fragile in some spots. There's a slightly irregular tear here on the right, and there's a more linear tear over there. So I'm moving my cover cardboard just to where the linear tear is. And I have this flap which I mentioned that I'm going to use as part of my closure, but I don't want to have all these little bumps because they're quite tricky to just work around. So I'm going to use my pencil from the fold line here, following this line, just to make a mark on either side, and I'm going to trim this off so that I've actually got more like a little triangle, which I think will make it easier. So just like that, and like that. There's a little fold edge here, but I think by the time I've put the card on, it's actually going to be strong enough to hold on its own. So the next thing that I'm going to do is not put the matte medium which I'm going to use on the paper. I'm going to put it onto my card, and I'm just going to, use a brush just to spread it on. I'm going to be fairly generous because I want it to stick down well. I haven't used this for a while, I must say. Right, so it's a nice sort of dryish paste. Actually, change of plan. I'm not going to use that. I just actually feel it's too thick. That was the Montmartre version. I think I'm just going to use this Galleria matte medium. It's a slightly more liquid one, and I do tend to use this more often. So yeah, there we go. Bit easier to spread, let's put it that way. Right, so I've got some on my surface. Just going to use my brush to smush it around. I'm going to go over where the matte medium was that I really put down, just so that I'm equally covered all over, and I think that this will bond with the paper faster. The other one that is slightly thicker, the Montmartre one, I think would be great if I'm doing collage with very delicate papers and I don't really want them to wrinkle, because a wet glue will always make your papers wrinkle because of paper structure. If you want a little lesson in paper structure, paper's actually made up with several layers of pulp, which is quite interesting, and I know this because I started a recycling project at my son's school when he was at junior school, which I'm very proud to say is still going and making money for the school. So that is, gosh, over 30 years it's been going, which is fantastic. So part of what we did with the kids at those days in the early 80s was we actually took them to a paper recycling plant. Really interesting to see the layers of pulp that make up a piece of paper. So it could be as many as 7 layers just to make up a piece of A4 copy paper, or it could be as little as 3 or 4. And if you're like me, you'll have noticed that copy paper has got pretty thin these last sort of 2 or 3 years, really, really thin. So what you're trying to do now is just to spread this evenly, so you don't have any thick areas like that, which obviously are going to take much longer to dry. And you want to make sure that you've got your glue right to the edge. If it goes onto the cover that you're going to work with, that's not a problem. Okay, so back to the way the paper is constructed. The reason why it warps is because out of those layers of paper, if you're putting glue on one side that's wet, that one side is getting damp, but the others are still pretty rigid, and that's why it starts to curl and wrinkle. Most importantly, if you are working with paper, if you're doing things like decoupage and your paper starts to wrinkle, don't fiddle with it. Leave it, let it dry, and it's usually not as bad as you think. The minute you start fiddling with it, you usually force wrinkles to become permanent rather than letting them just relax back to their normal state when they dry. Right, so I've got that secured nicely on there. I can feel it's actually gripping, and I just quickly want to flip over the other side and make sure I haven't got lumps and bumps, because I could rub that down with my hand, but I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to go over this again, and then I think I'm going to work on these outside edges. So I've got my crease for my tab that I'm going to use as a closure here, so I almost want that distance here so that I can cover my flap. So I'm going to cut my piece of paper, my faux leather, like that, and then I want to just sort of trim a little bit around the edges as well. There's a bit playing around here. I might yeah, I think I might just cut off a little bit on this corner, fold it in. Let's snip into this side here first so that we can bend the paper to make it more easy. So I'm cutting a line in towards this edge here, and I'll do one over here as well, and over here. This is just simply that I can make a nice neat corner, and then it will give me a little bit of flexibility as to how I wrap this onto the actual page. So I think to begin with, I'm going to start by gluing the outside ends. Let me see if I can unscrew this lid. I know it's always pretty difficult. Oh, there we go. I've always battled a little bit in the past. So I think to begin with, I'm going to probably maybe take this one down first, and then that over. No, maybe this way first. So let's glue this top bit first. And I will decorate this closure because it is going to be a tricky one to do. So I've got that glued on nicely. I'm now going to take this over and press that down firmly. And then I'm going to want to trim this fairly closely to where the actual line is, because this flap will come over and make the corner. So let me just eyeball this like that. That's good. And I'm going to do the same on this side here. There's the end is there. You could be more precise if you want to, but honestly this is not going to be a big exercise, so let me get it done. Trimming off these ends so I don't have too much bulk on the side of my journal, and I'm happy that that's glued down nicely. I just want to make sure that where this has slightly torn, I'm going to brush it down. And remember, if you are using something like matte medium, it does dry clear, so that's really easy to work with. Now for this section, I think I'm just going to trim a nice sort of neat edge along here. Snip that little one out, and I'll do the same over here. Right, so I tend to work opposite sides, so I'm going to glue this part of the cover down now on the opposite end. Fold that over, and you can see it grips the actual paper really nicely. And then I'm going to maybe make another little notch here because I don't want as much bulk. So I'm just going to cut a little bit away at the top here, otherwise I'm going to have a very bulky edge. Oh, I'm pulling it towards me, I'm so sorry, you won't be able to see that. One tends to forget when you're working on camera. So I'm just trimming a little bit of this bulk away. I'm actually not cutting right to the corner because otherwise I'll have a little gap. So I'm just going to do that to there, and this to here, and trim that extra bit away like that. There we go. So I've got my two edges stuck down nicely there. I'm now going to do the sides, or should I do this one first? That might be quite nice and neat. Right, so let's trim this in line with that piece of paper that is already there. So that looks continuous. And then I think, yeah, this is very much do it and make it as you go along, but it is often like that when you're making a journal that doesn't have a pattern or a template to go by. There we go. And for these edges where I have got several pieces of card folding over, I'm just going to glue them down with matte medium. My intention is to cover the whole journal with matte medium in the end in any case, so it should be fine. And then for this piece at the end here, I'm just going to fold this over. So I'm just going to paint a line all the way down the length of my card. I'm actually putting a little bit on the inside edge of this thicker piece of card just so that that grips. There we go. All the way to the edge, using that bit of seepage to just secure the ends down, especially here in the corner. Must have been really excited about doing this field journal. My grandfather was a great outdoor person. He had the most amazing collection of books and all the grasses and pastures of southern Africa, and all kinds of animals and birds. I mean, and in those days he couldn't just order off Amazon. He had to write a letter, usually to the UK, and request a publisher to cash the check that he'd sent to be able to get a book. So it was a lengthy process for him to be able to get any of these books. But I mean, he had the most amazing collection, which sadly I couldn't bring with me, but I did enjoy looking at while I was still in South Africa. I've given them to my sister now, but really a lovely collection. And so he would have made good use of everything that is natural, and this kind of reminds me of him in making this journal. It's just some of the things that he would have looked at in his life. So while I've got the cover facing upwards like this, you can see that I'm coating over the paper that has already been glued down. Then I'm going to let this side of the journal cover dry, and then I will turn it over and I'll paint matte medium on the other side, and I just feel that this will be my glossy edge, so to speak. Although this is matte, but it's going to seal it rather than me having to put more of the conditioner on or the hand cream. Just a couple of little edges here that I want to just put a bit more adhesive on so that I can tuck them in. There we go. Right, so let me let this dry. I'm going to then coat the front of it with the matte medium, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. I've dried the cover, and I've put a coat of matte medium on, which has given it a slight sheen, but you can always take it back if you want to by using some neutral floor polish, just the colourless one, or neutral shoe polish. Not the one that has the sponge on the end, but the one that actually has the little cake where you take it out and rub it on your shoes. That would give it a more sort of waxy kind of finish. So that's the look of the outside cover, bearing in mind that this started out as a little Amazon envelope. That's the inside of the cover, and I'm still going to cover the inside pages here. I've got some things that I want to do there. I have kept the flap of that Amazon envelope because that's going to be my closure, and in the next video, as I start to assemble this, I'll show you how to cut a slit here so that we can tuck this into the book so that it actually folds nicely. So I hope you'll enjoy. Why am I so tongue-tied today? I hope you'll join me for the next video. If you've liked this, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. I would love you to be able to get notifications of when the videos come out. I do try and post every single week. I will answer any questions and queries, or if you need help with anything, I'm very happy to do that, because I have had so many years of teaching and seen so much stuff happening during my classes that yeah, if I can answer a question for you, I'm happy to do that. So bye for now, until the next one, where we'll start to assemble this and put our pages in and do the inside cover.